The waters are choppy, but there's still time for the Blues to steady the ship. Welcome into another edition of the Blues Breakdown Podcast. I'm your host, Clay Herrell, and I apologize. A little bit of a hiatus last weekend. Wasn't able to record. Had some things going on. Didn't have enough time to record. But another housekeeping note. If this episode feels abbreviated or quick, this is the second time I'm recording it because for some reason the file didn't save after my last recording. So, frustrating situation, much like the St. Louis Blues. But here we are. We're giving it another whirl. Let's just jump right into how last week started. A 3-2 regulation loss to the Bruins on Tuesday. And let me tell you, I don't know if I've ever left Enterprise Center. I shouldn't say that because the hand pass game I was at against the Sharks, but I was the most frustrated I've been in a long time since leaving Enterprise Center. The Blues take a 2-0 lead. The special teams were excellent. They kill off 4 Boston power plays. They score 2 power play goals, and you're like, okay, they're turning a corner special team-wise, and they're beating the Bruins 2-0. They're on home ice. Like, surely nothing can go wrong here. Well, let me tell you, everything unraveled in the third period for the St. Louis Blues. They just essentially went to the play not to lose route, and trust me, we've seen them do that before, and guess what? Once again, it burned them. The Boston Bruins scored 3 unanswered goals in the third period to win that game 3-2, and the Blues nearly had a chance to ice that game. It was Nathan Walker coming down. He actually beat Swayman. He hit the post. Puck didn't go. Otherwise, the Blues probably win that game, and I think it's a much different outcome. But Pastrnak gets the OT or the game winner with like a minute 46 left in regulation to give the Bruins the win. They basically stole that one. And then I think after that, you go into Buffalo Thursday, and it's like, okay, confidence is probably a little low, at least around the fan base. And there was a story out of that. Like there always seems to be with the Blues. They lose at 3-2 in overtime. And it felt like one of those games where, they scored first, which is great. They scored first now in 4 straight games. But it's just, to me, when I look back on that game against Buffalo, it just felt like an ugly game all the way around. But the big story, as I mentioned, Kyrou hits the post with 4:38 left in regulation, and then doesn't play again the rest of the regulation period. And there was a big kind of a storm on that, especially on Twitter. With people frustrated, 2 weeks ago in Philly, people mad. Kyrou turns the puck over. Bobby Brink scores. A week after that against Utah, Kyrou turns the puck over. Dylan Guenther scores. And then people now, the week after that, this last Thursday against Buffalo, people are mad that Kyrou doesn't play in those situations. So to me, it's you can't have your cake and eat it too. You either need to want the kid to be out there and learn, or you're fine with securing your point going to overtime and essentially not throwing everything at the wall there in the last 4.5 minutes. To me, I don't mind what Bannister did, but what kind of confuses me is if this is the year where we're looking at this as a building year, we brought in all these young guys in like Broberg and Holloway, and you're getting Bolduc some playing time, and eventually you're going to get Dvorsky up there. Why not let Kyrou be a guy that also is learning still? I know he's been on this team for I think 5, 6, 7 years now. But he still has room to grow. He's still young. This season isn't just about the Brobergs and the Holloways. It's about guys like Kyrou, who maybe in 3 years, if you're in the Western Conference Final in a 2-2 game with 5 minutes left, you're going to want him on the ice, and you're going to have to trust him to be on the ice. So why not use this year to let him get those experiences and show him that you can trust him? But if this is a year, and the reason I think that's what this year is just kind of how everything was talked about, this is still a young team, and it really felt like that would be the kind of year this is, and now it seems like, okay, maybe points do matter, and I don't know. I just wish that it was a little more clear on what they want to see from some of these guys, because I think that's a spot where you show Kyrou, like, hey, we trust what you can do out there, you won't, cost us anything. And I think it would have been big for his confidence. And I really don't think he would have cost you. I mean, I know it happened twice already, but he's played really, really well this season, and he nearly scored to give you the win. But that's kind of just my take on it. You can't have your cake and eat it too. So either you want Kyrou out there in those situations because you want to try to win the game in regulation, or you're not happy with what you've seen in those last 2 weeks against Philly and Utah, and you don't want him on the ice in those last 4.5 minutes. So I think some of the fan base, it was the same ones complaining about the turnovers that were then complaining about him not playing. So the Blues, though, also just need to pick a direction, but it kind of felt like after that, you had lost 4 in a row, the season felt like it was in real danger coming off the tracks. Guys were getting injured left and right. You're still banged up with Thomas, Broberg, Leddy. P.O. Joseph goes down. And it just, like I said, it felt like things were in danger there. But credit to the Blues. They come into that game against Boston, who they just blown a 2-goal lead to in the third period, and they played really, really well. That was, to me, the third best 60 they've played all year. I think the Islanders one that they won in overtime was up there because they played really, really well in front of Hofer. And then I really think that game in Toronto, they won, I think it was 5-1 or something like that. I think that was a really solid 60 they played there as well. And to me, this Boston game comes right up there with those other two. So they come out right away and they get the goal from Fox off the deflection. And then Trent Frederick, the St. Louis kid, gets 2 of his own in the first. And you're kind of looking at this like, okay, how is this team going to respond? Because it felt like maybe they were a little bit fragile mentally in terms of just how things have been going. So how would they respond going into the second period? Well, they didn't give up a goal, but they didn't score one either. And then Nathan Walker, who I'm going to get to here in a bit, has just been excellent for the Blues this season. He ties the game at 2, and then Braden Shen, who just was with a carbon copy of his OT winner against San Jose, does the same thing to beat Korpisalo and finally get the Blues back in the win column and give them a 3-2 win. A much-needed win at that. It kind of steadied the ship for them heading into the second night of a back-to-back against Carolina, which, once again, you score first, you pick up where you left off from that 60 against Boston, and it's like, okay, maybe this team's turning the corner, because really that first period, aside from the Svechnikov power play goal with like 30 seconds left, like they dominated that first period, but then from the Svechnikov goal on, Eric Robinson scored, I think, 17 seconds into that second period to make it 2-1 Carolina. Then Marty Necas gets a pair of goals on his own, which the fact that guy was talked about as being traded this offseason is just with his contract situation and getting the rights to his contract, like, I just mind-boggling with the run and the tear he's on right now. He makes the Blues pay with 2 goals of his own there to give the Canes a 4-1 win. But I'm a little more lenient with that because it is the second night of a back-to-back. So I'm okay with that loss. I know it's in the grand scheme of things with how that road trip has went, people aren't probably thrilled with it. But to me, it was just, okay, whatever. You kind of look at that and you're, like I said, second night of a back-to-back, you just kind of forget about it. And now they're coming back home. Just some general thoughts. I mean, the Blues have to stop shooting themselves in the foot. That game Tuesday night against Boston and St. Louis, like, just so many times that they're just like in their own zone with the puck, and like they either fumble it off the boards or turn it over, or they try to go D to D, and it somehow ends up going off the boards, and the Bruins would keep it in. And it's just like, it's already burning them and ending up in the back of their net. And then it feels like if it keeps happening, it's going to keep burning them, and it's going to keep ending up in the back of their net. So it's just something that they have to get under control, and I feel like this is an issue the Blues have had for not just this year, but really the last couple seasons. But yeah, that game against Boston was the one that really jumped out to me, but I felt like it was an issue really this entire last week on the road trip. And it's something that I don't notice watching other teams do, and I don't know what the Blues exactly, if they're just not sure 100%, not confident, what it is. But it's simply something that has to stop. On a more positive note, though, the WTF line of Walker, Toropchenko, and Fox has been incredible for the Blues. Specifically Nathan Walker. I was a big critic of even questioning why he was making the team out of camp. I didn't feel like there was a spot for him with Texier and Bolduc, and it seemed like Kapanen, who had a pretty good preseason, was going to be maybe more of a regular, which we'll get to that here in a second. But I was way wrong on Nathan Walker. Very happy to admit that, because I think he's probably been one of, if not the most impactful players for the Blues so far this season. He leads the team in hits. He scored some big goals. He made some big plays. So to me, Nathan Walker has been massive for the Blues this year. Another guy that's jumped out at me, and he's my favorite player, so I'm probably a little biased, but Dylan Holloway. When I was watching this week, he's not lining up the score sheet in terms of goals. I don't know that he's scored since, I want to say, the game in Toronto, maybe. That's the last one. He had a 2-goal game there with the empty netter and the goal there in the first. But that's the last one that comes to my mind just off the top of my head without looking. But he just reminds me so much of Barbashev during his Blues tenure. I know now Barbashev's on that top line with Vegas, and he plays with Eichel and Stone, and he's doing a lot more offensively. But watching Holloway, it's exactly what Barbashev was. He's not afraid to throw the body. He back checks everything hard when the Blues turn it over in the O-zone. I feel like he's rarely making the wrong decision, which I say that, he made a bad read. I think it was the Carolina game. They gave up a 3-on-1, and I think there was 1 or 2 in the Boston game. But I just feel like he's never making the wrong decision as often some of the other guys on the ice. And then he's always directing the play north, and he's always funneling pucks to the net, which is something the Blues have to keep doing. I think pucks have to keep going to the net, especially on the power play, and he's a part of that second unit that we talked last episode about that I just feel like has been so much better than the top unit. But yeah, I've just been a big fan of what I've seen from Holloway. It literally feels like b-schaeff 2.0. And yeah, they ended up going 1-1-1 on the road trip, and now they're back home. And it feels like episode 1 or episode 2 all over again, because it's Minnesota on Tuesday, San Jose on Thursday. And with Minnesota, like we said when we played Utah, like we said against Minnesota, the first Minnesota game, and I know there's one more Central Division matchup, the Winnipeg game, you have to beat teams in your own division. They still haven't picked up a point against the Central this season. And with the way when Winnipeg's going the way they are, and you know the quality of teams like Minnesota and really Colorado and Dallas, like, you have to be able to pick up points against the Central if you want to have a chance. And right now the Blues aren't doing that. This will be another crack at, I think, their 4th crack at the Central this year. But they have to do it. And then Thursday, I've said in episode 1, I'm not going to say anything else about it. You have to beat the Sharks. It is nothing, no other way to say it, no other breakdown. You have to dominate the entire 60 minutes of that game, or to me it's a failure no matter if you win that game like you did 5-4 in overtime. You have to dominate the full 60 against a bad team like the Sharks. And then the week wraps up with a game, I think it's Saturday, in Long Island against the Islanders, a team you beat 1-0 in overtime. They're probably going to be hungry to at least salvage one from the season series. But it's a weird road trip. You were literally just out east, playing the Bruins and the Sabres, and now they're sending you back out to play the Islanders, and then next week you get the Rangers and the Devils. And we'll touch more on that road trip in next week's episode. But it's going to be a trip, I think, that's a lot of fun, because I think it's going to be a big test for the Blues, specifically with the Rangers and the Devils, teams you haven't seen yet this year. I'd be shocked if they come out of this with a winning road trip, but they have looked good against some other good teams already this year. I'm excited. I think the Rangers one is the one that's really, to me, like a good litmus test for this team, just to see how they respond against a team that is like a bona fide cup contender. You know they're going to be in the mix and probably in the Eastern Conference Finals. And the New York Rangers with Igor Shesterkin, who is in a contract year and looking to lock up big money. So that, to me, is the one that I'm most excited for going into next week. But you got to take care of business this week with Minnesota, and then San Jose on Thursday, and then the Islanders on Saturday. Like I said in the open, though, the waters are a bit choppy right now for the Blues. But there's a chance for them. There's still plenty of time to steady the ship. I'm recording this on Monday, and what I found interesting was not that they put Kasperi Kapanen on waivers. I just kind of assumed with Bolduc being in a game, Texier being out a game, Bolduc will then be out, Texier back in, Kapanen out, whoever in. I thought maybe that was sort of kind of what they were doing, maybe just trying to free up some playing time for some of these guys and not having to go between the press box and then playing, or press box and then playing. But Jeremy Rutherford had an interesting tweet here on Monday. Regarding Kapanen on waivers, based on Thomas skating again and joining the Blues on the recent road trip, his return is expected sooner than later. Could Thomas play this week? Possibly, but it could just be the Blues not having any plans to play Kapanen and saving some salary cap, which if Thomas is back, the fact that we're having this conversation on November 18th is wild, because his reevaluation date from when he was when they diagnosed the injury was 6 weeks, so it would have been December 4th. So the fact that we're having this conversation now is massive for the Blues. You can't really put into words how important he is for this team. And then really you're looking at, hopefully by December 18th, somewhere around there, by Christmas time, you're fully healthy, with Broberg's reevaluation date being December 2nd. P.O. Joseph, you hope, is back, and then Nick Leddy. I don't really know exactly what the deal is with him, but because when it happened, it was like, oh, he'll be fine, and like he'll probably travel on the next road trip. But now all of a sudden we're going on like a month of a Nick Leddy absence. So weird thing there. But the Blues, I feel like, are a month away from being healthy, which will be huge for them. But yeah, you got to take care of these 2 home games. You need, I think, 3 or 4 points. You can suffer an overtime loss in my mind, but try to get 3 of the 4 points and then head out on the road and just see what you can do against some tough competition in the Islanders, the Rangers, and the Devils. But yeah, a big week ahead for the Blues. A chance to, like I said, steady the ship, get back on track. It'll be a fun week, I think, and it'll be good to see the Blues back at Enterprise Center after the 3-game road trip. And then, like I said, they head back on the road. So a lot to look at this week, and we will talk more next week. Let's go Blues.